So I think we're getting ready for the panel discussion, right? Any questions while we're waiting here?
They were working on my mic. Hey, don't go too far, Doc. We've got a lot planned for you.
We got the group coming in.
Awesome. Hey, do you mind if I talk you out of that hot rod there?
Take that.
Sweet. Thank you. So how did he do? What do you think? Isn't that great? Isn't it magnificent to know that you have at your disposal such doctors with such a depth and breadth of knowledge of the product that we're all promoting? All right, let's see. Maybe, how about there, gentlemen? Will that work?
We're good.
Can I tell you to move over there? That'll work probably well. Looks like we got extra chairs. It looks like somebody thought I might need 2 chairs. That's okay. I won't take it personal. All righty. This feels kind of like Oprah. I've never done this before, but this will be lots and lots of fun. So what we want to do now is begin a panel discussion, primarily for the purposes of since our launch in November. Forgive the quick tangent. Remember, we are still in our foundational year. So we launched November 1st, 2014. That means we are still within that first 12-month magical window of our foundational year. We are just now starting this movement. Now's the time. Too often in this industry and generally in business, we hear about timing, and generally by the time we hear about it as people, right? Forgive me, I got to stand for this part. This is too fun. So too often by the time we hear about timing and getting the timing right, we heard about it after it's too late. Well, not in this case. Not in this case. The timing is absolutely perfect for us. Forgive me, sorry about that tangent. Okay, now, anyway, as I meant to say, we've been gathering questions from all of you since our launch. And now I'm going to present them to you. Please feel free to answer them as you wish. Before we do that, though, we're missing somebody. And perhaps, Dr. Hasse, can I trouble you to tell us whom we are missing? And maybe you tell us a little bit about him?
Sure. Thanks, Jason. The missing person, you see the empty chair here, is Dr. Kedar Prasad. You all saw the pictures on the wall outside in the hallway, and you saw the initial start of all of this. Dr. Prasad is our founding partner, an antioxidant scientist of amazing recognition, international reputation, and my personal friend for about 30 years. Kedar could not be with us today because his son has a very serious illness, and he's needed at home. Dr. Prasad was born in Bihar, India, in the 1930s. From pretty humble beginnings, Bihar is the poorest state in the country of India. In fact, Kedar told me that he never even had his first photograph taken of him, or he never had his first watch until he was through high school, if you can imagine that. But this young gentleman worked hard in India, had no money, came to the United States with about $4 in his pocket, and when he landed in the United States, he was supposed to be picked up by a professor who had invited him here, but the professor was late, so that Kedar asked a cab driver in New York if he could get him to the hotel where he was supposed to be. And the cab driver said, "How much money do you have?" And Kedar said, $4. And the cab driver said, "Well, it'll take $4 to get to your hotel." So he had actually no money left when he met with his professor. But Dr. Prasad is a unique individual. He worked his way through that education. He became the first PhD in radiation biology ever given in the United States. He worked on the Manhattan Project. He then met Linus Pauling and became fascinated with antioxidant research, starting, of course, with vitamin C. And then had an amazing career at the University of Colorado, published 200 papers, NIH funding. He was on the Nobel Committee for the Prize in Medicine as a nominator. And I met him 30 years ago when this crazy Indian working in a laboratory said to me, you know, these micronutrients do something. And I said, I don't know, supplementation sounds like it's pretty far out. And he said, no. He said, I got to show you these cell lines. I have to show you this laboratory experiments. And over time, I sort of came to enjoy the science. I met his colleague, Dr. Bill Cole, and they said, you know what? We ought to take this to humans. We ought to make human beings better with antioxidant science. And over the next several years, meeting with Jim and other MDs, we were able to take this work from the laboratory to the animals to human beings. And that was the genesis of how we started. So Kedar, I know you're a Hindu, so you're doing Hindu prayers for your son. We're going to do Christian Judeo prayers today for you. I'm sorry you're not here, but there will be a time where this audience gets to meet him, and I look forward to that. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is a result of his initial work.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So we'll pretend he's sitting right here. Now let me introduce our panel, and then let's get right into it. So Dr. Ehrlich, whom you all just heard from and met. Doc, thank you again for a great presentation. Dr. Hasse, whom also many of you have met. You've seen both of them actually in our video. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing that about Dr. Prasad. And then, of course, we have Randy Looper, who is the president of PMC. And it is this, well, forgive me for saying so, but it's this poor man into whose bag I looked and discovered MMF. So I do owe him an apology, probably public. So there it is. There's your public apology.
Accepted.
You won't get another one. Now, okie dokie. I have several questions here. Let's have fun with these. Now, the first is, let's see, and perhaps we ought to address this one to you, Dr. Hasse. We know that United States Marine Corps Systems Command asked you to create MMF to protect and fortify Marines, airmen, sailors, and soldiers in extreme environments. Could you please walk us through how MMF was born?
Okay, Jason, this is really a fascinating story, and I think it underlies what's exciting about MMF and Engage Global, because it's a unique story, and no other product in the world has this story. Kedar Prasad and I were wondering what we were going to do after we started our research, because we had a lot of interest from physicians, especially in New York, as to how we were going to roll this out. And unfortunately, September 11, 2001 happened before we could launch with physicians. So we were in a hotel in Washington intending to actually meet with NIH personnel to tell them about our discoveries with this unique micronutrients that we were sort of looking at different formulations, when the phone rang in the hotel room. And it was the Marine Corps, the United States Marine Corps. I have no idea how they knew we were in that hotel room, but they said, is this Dr. Prasad and Dr. Hasse? They had read Kedar's initial paper on using micronutrients for protection against a number of conditions, and we had written a paper together, so they knew both of our names. And we said, yes, this is us. And they said, would you mind coming to Quantico, Virginia? And we said, what? And they said, well, we have some Russians here, and we'd like you to meet them and talk with them. So Kedar and I went to Quantico, Virginia. And we sat at a long table, and there were these guys with these red stars on their hat and looked like Russians, and they were had translators. And it turns out that the Russians had used some micronutrients in their war against the Mujahideen, their Afghan war in the late 1980s. And what they found was very interesting. They found that when they gave micronutrients to these soldiers, and their formula was nowhere near as comprehensive as what we came up with, which is now MMF, they actually got better outcomes. They got less injury severity scores. They had less multiple organ failure. And when these Russian soldiers got out of the combat zone, they had better neurologic outcomes. So the Marines said to Kedar and I, can you please make a formula for us that will protect our Marines and our Army soldiers and our Rangers and our Special Navy SEALs and everybody, because we're going to war. We're going to go into Afghanistan. We may go into Iraq. We have to fight a very bad enemy, and we need your help. Please put together a micronutrient formulation that will protect our U.S. operating forces against some very hostile environments, possibly toxic agents, maybe even sort of chemical agents and nerve agents. Who knows what they'll encounter. But if you could do that, we'd appreciate it. And what came out of that, Jason, was a multi-year, multi-million-dollar effort supported by the United States Congress, where we put together a formulation that was a blockbuster, and now Engage Global has it. It's MMF.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor. Wow. That couldn't have been better if we'd scripted it. That's awesome. I love that. Every time I hear this story, I love it. Okay, next question. Perhaps this one will be for you, Dr. Ehrlich. DNA protection and repair is a very important topic for people today. Please explain why the micronutrients in MMF can help safeguard DNA and even enable our cells to trigger repair after exposure to ionizing radiation and other sources of DNA damage. So what I gathered from this question from them was clearly DNA protection and repair generally is important to people. And I think as the collective consciousness in this country is heightened, DNA is becoming a something that we should pay attention to. And we're also understanding that it's vulnerable. And they'd like to know how MMF might help them in that regard.
Well, it's a great question. You know, the DNA is actually the center of all of our activities, our cognitive function, our physical function, and it's very delicate. DNA damage occurs every day, and in order to have a healthy repair mechanism, you need the right environment. You can't have too much inflammation. You can't have a lot of damaging free radicals. You can't have a depressed immune system, because that's the environment in which breakage of DNA occurs more readily and repair is inhibited. With that background, it's been known for years that various micronutrients can support both the stability of DNA, countering breakage of DNA, and also can enhance the repair and match these base pairs of these nucleotides so that the thousands and thousands of breakages that occur every day can be repaired faithfully without mutations. So with this background, we entered a very important study that I alluded to, which was looking at how one particular source of known breakage, it's been known for years that CT scans, CAT scans, depending on the dose used, will routinely break hundreds of DNA in that 5-minute experience that you're having this procedure. What has never been known is how well can the best micronutrients, and I think we were chosen because we were the best, perform in stabilizing this process and minimizing damage. So I went to a professor of radiology at the University of North Carolina who had been an outspoken critic of using too much ionizing radiation and said, can we do a study that would prove once and for all whether this formulation that we developed would protect DNA? And he knew that there was a group in Germany that at the University of Nuremberg, Erlangen, Germany, that had the best test, we call it an assay, that can quantify how much breakage occurs with a CT scan. They've been doing it for years, and they used a very interesting test for that. And we simply said, can we test both in what's called in vitro, in the laboratory, in the test tube, and also in vivo, in humans themselves, whether pre-treating people with this particular formulation will protect their DNA. We were able to show for the very first time ever that a micronutrient can protect the human body, namely DNA double-strand breakage from this radiation. And we demonstrated in one study a 58% reduction, in the next study a 62% reduction, and published it, I presented it at the Society of Cardiovascular CT in 2011, and then it was published the following year or 2 years later in the very prestigious journal Radiology. And it actually then had an editorial associated with it. It was chosen as sort of the lead article for that issue. So we're very proud of proving that DNA can be protected. And this was a striking example of how to do it.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. And it's my understanding, too, that if one were to continue to take these micronutrients, that the repair just increases over time.
And that's very likely.
And
That's
the protection as well. So thank you.
That's right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You know,
Thank
nobody else has that either. We're the only ones that have that data. So that's pretty cool.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you, doctors. All righty, let's see. Next question. Okay, we'll let y'all decide who gets to answer this one. Gene expression is becoming, gene expression is also becoming increasingly more important to our customers, and we'll just say generally to people today, especially those who understand that healthy gene expression can be compromised by our lifestyle. So let me just restate this, kind of hard to understand. So gene expression is becoming increasingly more important to all of us today, especially to those of us who understand that healthy gene expression can be compromised by lifestyle. So the question there would be, would either of you care to explain how MMF's micronutrients can affect the body's natural ability to help restore healthy gene expression?
I think I'm going to take that because I'm currently the National Cardiology Director for a company whose only business is measuring gene expression. And this is a Silicon Valley company. So I've become more familiar actually with this very important concept. And let me first mention that there's a fundamental difference between what you hear about commonly with genomics, people's genes. In general, when you think about genetic tests, whether they're tests for breast cancer susceptibility or Alzheimer's susceptibility, these are looking at the future risk. And this is, you're born with this, and it's immutable. So think about most genetic tests as something that gives you the tendency or depicts the tendency or susceptibility to future diseases. Gene expression is a snapshot currently of how your genes behave. When we talk about behavior, it means what do they express? They express proteins in the form of messenger RNA. And this drives how we respond to inflammation, how we respond to stresses. And what you want is an environment where the right genes that can express proteins to protect us are maximized, and we call that upregulated. They are driven to express these protective proteins, and we suppress those genes that could be turned on that do damaging things. So what we now know is that micronutrients, and the ones that we selected, maximize those genes' expression of protective beneficial proteins in the form of messenger RNA, and suppress or downregulate those genes that potentially could express proteins and messenger RNA that could harm us. So I think that's the overview and what probably needs to be known about this.
Thank you. Forgive me maybe a tangential question about this too. To what extent does gene expression influence, say, premature aging? Or maybe I'm asking that in the reverse order. Is premature aging influenced by that? And is there something we can do about it?
You want to answer?
Yeah, that's a very perceptive question. Actually, the short answer is yes. It's a complicated way to get there, but it is true that if you are in an environment where the wrong genes are expressed, you have a progression not only of aging, but you have a progression of many other debilitating conditions, and some of which may in fact lead to diseases. So if you can change that environment as we would with MMF, and you can have a favorable gene expression profile, you actually abrogate or slow that process down. And that's what, of course, we see in many of the studies that we've done. Quite an exciting area, and I think over the next several years we'll learn exactly which genes we can turn on and off and what doses do it maximally. But it's a very exciting sort of a window to the future, and why we know we're on the right track with MMF.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Thank you. I do know that we have customers who just appear younger. They feel younger. For instance, I have a close friend who's a member whose beard used to be just white, and now it's dark, quite a bit darker. Same thing. Hair was white, getting darker, and it just is. We perceive the person getting younger, and they feel that they're getting younger. So maybe these are the mechanisms causing that. So thank you. Okie dokie. Next question. Let's see. I'll ask this of Dr. Hassey, if that's okay. The CQF standard, about which, Doc, thank you, you spoke very eloquently earlier. The CQF standard separates MMF from all other supplements. Combination, quantity, form, right? That's the CQF standard. So the question, please explain what this is. What is the CQF standard, and why is it so important, especially using natural biologic isoforms?
Well, this is really the difference between what we have here with Engage Global and all the other stuff that's out there. All that stuff that claims to be an antioxidant, and all that stuff that claims to have all these great results, although they can't really show studies like we can, fails in that structure that you just talked about, the content and the quantity and the forms. And the short answer is that if you don't understand antioxidant science, you don't combine the proper dietary antioxidants with the endogenous antioxidants, that's the kind that the body makes, and with the glutathione elevating agents, that is the agents that get into the cells and drive glutathione levels, which is the body's most important internal antioxidant, to maximum levels. If you don't do that, you do not get the broad effect that we see with MMF. The reason is that there are thousands of different kinds of free radicals, and there are many body compartments and environments where these free radicals work. Some have high oxygen tension, some have low oxygen tension. Some are intracellular, some are extracellular, some are in water environments, some are in fat environments. And if you don't take care of all of those, you cannot expect to get the results that we get. And as for quantity, that's very important. So dose and dose schedule are absolutely vital. And in the typical micronutrient or supplement world where people take things once a day, what we learned in Dr. Prasad's laboratory was that if you do take the various antioxidants on a once-a-day basis, because of their half-life, the water-soluble moieties or constituents would have a half-life that might be 12 hours, or 8 hours, or 6 hours. The fat solubles would be a little longer. But what happens is you get a peak, and then you get a trough. And at that trough, the body screams for help. It emotes a gene actually called DJ1 that we isolated in Kadar's lab, and it encodes for a stress protein. And the protein says, oh my God, I don't have enough antioxidants, and causes a tremendous stress response in your body. Well, stress is the exact opposite of what we want when we have a micronutrient. So why the heck would you want that? So by giving twice-a-day dosing, we smooth out that whole pattern. We don't fire DJ1. We don't get that stress protein, and we can take advantage of the antioxidant effect that MMF gives us that very few others have figured out. As for the important isoforms that you mentioned, that's chemistry, but I want to just take a word on that. The body biologically recognizes only certain forms of different micronutrients. They have to be in the right stereotopic form for the body to see them and use them. If you have the improper form, you may as well not take that nutrient. There's many, many examples. I'll give you a couple. Vitamin A, for example, comes in two forms. One's called the trans form, and one is called the cis form. And if you don't use the all-trans form, now that's more expensive, but that's what MMF's about. If you don't use that all-trans form, you will not get the vitamin A effect. You won't see the differentiation of cells. You won't see the driving to make carotenoids, and you don't get the biologic effect. Vitamin E is the same way. If you have vitamin E in the levo form, which is the cheap form, it doesn't work. The body doesn't recognize it. So you must have the more expensive dextro form, what we call the natural form of vitamin E, for the body to see it. Also, it's unusual, but in fact, in some cases, you want actually not a natural form, in MMF. And one of the real harbingers of this is calcium. If you take calcium in a natural form, it will be absolutely contaminated. There is no way you can get pure calcium. They're always contaminated, at least on Earth, with manganese, magnesium, and various other mercury's a biggie. And so those are problems. So what you want to do is understand antioxidant science well enough to have the right components, the right quantity and dose schedule, and the right isoforms to get the biologic effects we see. And to my knowledge, only MMF has all three of those characteristics.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Right. You feeling lonely up here?
Are you sure?
Yeah, you're wondering if I'm going to get to you?
Yeah. Well, that crossed my mind.
Okay. Well, then this one's for you. In fact, this is the last question on the list, and then we'll have a conversation between Doctors Hasse and Ehrlich. So, question to you, Mr. Looper, is you have a unique perspective as the president of PMC. Why should everyone include MMF in his or her daily routine in your experience?
That's a good question, and I think I'm probably living proof. Without MMF and spending as much time as I do listening and going through this with the doctors, the stress level can be extremely high. Without MMF, I probably would look like one of Jim's pictures up there, and I still may before it's over with. But I think there's a couple reasons why it's not just, it's almost a responsibility. I've heard so many testimonials over the last couple days of just outstanding results of getting on the product. And these are tough situations. And then I heard Angela get up there and talk about, even the healthy people, how there's benefits, for everyone. I'm a healthy person. Fortunately, knock on wood. I've been taking MMF for quite a long time. And when I travel, I don't come off the plane with a cold. When I work out, I'm ready to go and meet the day. So this goes across not only the people that may have situations in their life where they may need a little bit more help on stress or any condition that they're fighting, but also the everyday person that just wants a healthier lifestyle. It's really, this is a foundation. This is the foundation that's going to take it out to everyone. They're not going to be able to find this anywhere else. And it's really a great responsibility for us to say, how can we get this out to everyone? Because I don't think anybody could stand up and list 5 individuals in their life, in their immediate circle, that could not benefit from being on MMF. I know I couldn't. And these guys remind me about that every day. And I'll leave one more thing. This is the heavy lifting of years and years of science that you're taking the top benefit from. We don't have to go back and prepare these studies. We don't have to go back and hope that it works. We know it does because the scientists on this panel and then Dr. Prasad have already done that. So you're really getting the benefit from that. So I wasn't going to waste my time on not getting a few points of that out. So
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much.
I do want to add that we at Premier Micronutrient Corporation as scientists have been obviously very proud of what we've accomplished, but we've been very disappointed when we realized that we have no marketing bones in our body. We have no sales force. We said we've got to find the highest reputation, the most ethical company to responsibly bring this out to the world. And so we are absolutely thrilled that all of you have attended here today, that Jason and his great team, David and everybody else, really takes this seriously. I mean, so, great science, is not helpful if you can't get it out to the world, and this is what we have in this partnership. So this is really very, very special for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't mind to add just a thing to that, and that's exactly right. That we're a research and development company, and giving and sharing a product like this with the world is almost like giving an appendage, basically, and saying, oh, I don't know if I really want to, but I know this is the only way this is going to happen. And when we sit down and first got this going, it really wasn't, Engage was just a name. The trust of this company handing this product over was with you and David. And then you put together a team. And again, I love looking out and seeing this foundation and know where it's going and the vision that it's going to go in 2 to 3 to 4 years. So Jim is absolutely right. We did not have this advantage, but now we do. And we trust this special product in your hands.
Thank you. So maybe now, it sounds to me that the question really ought to be for the audience, and that is, how much of an advantage are you? Are you the advantage they've been looking for? Game on, I heard. I agree. They are exactly what we need. Now, you had a couple of questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Dr. Hasse a couple things that I've learned over time from his pioneering work with Dr. Prasad and Dr. Cole, but just a couple of things that illuminate why MMF is special. One of which is maybe a couple examples of the type of research that we've done with the military, and give us a sense of what we were able to show with our product. Because as we're all talking about, this was developed for the military and now is available to everyone. So we should learn a little bit about, specifically the types of studies we've done with the military. And with NASA, maybe.
Okay, Jim. Well, first of all, after we formulated MMF, we then went to the Department of Defense, and we said, well, the Congress has given us some money. We'd like to give this to some soldiers and see how it works. And they looked at us and they laughed and they said, go away, boys. Come back when you have something else. Because at that time all we had was the laboratory work. So we went through a several-year period of animal studies, and we actually got a lot of money from Congress. Thank you for paying your taxes. And so we did a lot of animal studies, more than a dozen studies. I want to highlight one in particular because Milton, I don't know if you're here, but it shared a video with me last night about a Parkinson's patient, which really struck with me because actually looking at neurologic protection was one of the first things that we did. And we have a relationship at Meharry Medical College with a neurophysiologist by the name of Clive L. Charlton, who had a rodent model of Parkinsonism, where we actually took an agent, MPTP, methylphenyl tetrahydropyridine. There's going to be a spelling test at the end of this for you. And what we do, we inject that into the rodents, and they get Parkinson's. It's actually a contaminant in a recreational drug, so if you've ever seen somebody who's a user, they sort of hobble and they do this Parkinsonian affect with their bodies, and the rats all develop Parkinson's. Well, we gave them our micronutrient formulation, and 86% of the rats remained totally normal. So, and that's never been shown before. In fact, Dr. Charlton was so excited he actually presented that paper at the Society of Academic Scientists. So we had some laboratory data, and we did many more animal studies. We then took the formulation to a civilian group, and we looked at civilians to see if we could protect them against oxidative damage. And what we found was absolutely remarkable. We actually went to an area of the world where there's a very high rate of serious diseases, including cancer, and we gave a group of these people in a prospective clinical trial study our micronutrients, and we actually measured a lipid peroxidation product called malondialdehyde. There was a test on that too after the meeting. And so we looked at this malondialdehyde, and it was absolutely remarkable. This is a 6-month study, and we found both in urine and in blood plasma that we were able to completely degrade this oxidative damage. That's the first time that it was ever shown that an oral product could do that in humans. Now, the person we were working with, a lady, a professor there, she's very smart. And she said, since we have the blood from these patients, why don't we look at immune function? Randy mentioned that when he gets off the plane, he doesn't have a cold. He doesn't get sick. Well, there's a reason for that. And we looked at immune function in these patients with a very sophisticated assay called the lymphocyte transformation assay, where in fact we look at, if you give a challenge to somebody, you look at how many of their lymphocytes sort of turn into activated killer cells to actually fight off the antigen. And what we found was we were able to improve the immune function by 25% in these humans, these volunteers. Again, had never been shown before that a micronutrient could do that. So then we had all these animal studies and we had this key human study, and so we went back to the Department of Defense and we said, hey boys and girls, we've got this data now. And they said, wow, we've never seen anything like that with a micronutrient. And we were the first company to get approval by the Institutional Review Board of the Department of Defense to give a micronutrient by mouth to U.S. operating forces. Very cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Wow.
Well, then, and I'll just talk, we have a lot of studies, but I'm going to talk about just one.
I hope nobody has any plans later.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Dinner is delayed. There is one study I do want to highlight because I think it's very relevant for this audience. We looked at Marines at 29 Palms. I don't know if any of you have ever been to 29 Palms, California, up to the mountain warfare station up there. It's miserable. It's cold. It's rainy. And these young men are, running 20, 30 miles a day with heavy packs, and they get oxidative damage like you wouldn't believe, and inflammation. And we then did a randomized, prospective, blinded study on these Marines. And what we showed was remarkable. With our military formulation, we were able to not only stop the increase in oxidative damage that these Marines get, but we in fact were able to decrease it in the face of such activity and in the face of such very bad environments. And so you asked a question earlier about why should everyone take it. If you start taking the right proper micronutrients at a younger age in an active lifestyle, you're going to be much better off when you're at middle age or beyond. And I think that makes it very, very exciting. So the fact that Chad's recovery time from his weightlifting and his heavy gym work was cut in half, that doesn't surprise me at all. We've seen it in triathletes and we've seen it in others. This is a formulation that can be taken literally from a relatively young age on, and I'm not going to tell any secrets, but even for children, there's something coming through Engage Global in a short time period. So this is a product for everyone. Take it forever. Very good for you.
For everyone, and take it forever. I love that. Thank you. And it's kind of an interesting paradox, really. I mean, when you think about our customer base, and so many of us, we love MMF because, you start to get the aches and the pains and the creaks and so on. But then when you consider for whom the product was manufactured and created in the first place, 19, 20, early 20-somethings in the peak of health, then it starts to kind of dawn on people like me that maybe you're right, Doc. It is for everybody forever. For everybody forever. We all got that? For everybody forever. Any age. Okay, have we any more questions to address? Because those are the only questions I have for the panel.
I think we're pretty well done. I do want to, again, emphasize this very important concept that Jason has put together in a nice way, the CQF concept. If you go to as an exercise, if you go to Vitamin Cottage or GNC or whatever, or the supermarket, look at some of the vitamins there. You're going to first see how many of them are twice a day. That'll get you to just about none left. They're very proud once a day because once a day is convenient. But listening to what Dr. Hasse mentioned about the potential damaging effects of reaching this trough level and then elaborating stress proteins and other things that can make things worse. So look at that first. Then look to see if there's any iron, manganese, or copper mixed with vitamin C. They're all going to have vitamin C, and I can guarantee you 99%, all the Centrum products, all the other things, are going to include one or all of those three metals. Well, it's no secret among antioxidant scientists that that's pro-oxidant. Mixing vitamin C with either iron, manganese, or copper is the opposite of what you want. Then think about the ones that very often we tell people, look at the back of our thing, and they say, boy, I've seen things that look a lot like it has more stuff, and they have vanadium and boron and all these things. I challenge you to find any study that shows a value to some of these trace metals that we purposely left out. So sometimes when we look at the CQF idea and concept, it's sometimes what you don't include that's important, as important as all these proper forms and combinations that we do. So you might want to, in discussion with other people who will say to you, well, I already take Centrum, I already take this, ask them those questions. Remember about vitamin C and iron, manganese, or copper. Ask them whether it's once a day or more than once a day, right? And very quickly, you can cut to the chase and start talking about the positive aspects and the science behind this and why this CQF concept is so important. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us here today. So our takeaway is MMF is absolutely unique, and it's for everyone forever. For everyone forever. We'll have to put that on the box. Thank you. Let's give it up for our PMC panel.